Right now in the Middle East, there's the Iranian problem and there's the ISIS problem. Which is the greater threat, and how would you advise the next president to manage? I don't think this current president's going to listen to you or me, but how would you advise the next president to manage a two-front war, which is actually, unlike the first war, right up against each other?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Hugh, and it's not easy. I don't know if we can take the rest of the evening to talk about the problem, but basically you have in Syria civil war that has helped precipitate the creation of ISIS. ISIS partly grew out of the old Al-Qaeda, and they've moved and established caliphate, which is a big, big deal. It's not just a piece of real estate. It has great meaning from a religious standpoint to Muslims all over the world. And the problem we have now, it's become a safe harbor, a sanctuary from which they launch attacks against us. I.e. San Bernardino this week, Paris a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's very important that that caliphate be eliminated. I think it's got to be your objective in that part of the world. That's easier said than done, but that ought to be our objective, and we ought to build a strategy around that objective. With respect to Iran, I think the first thing we have to do is to abrogate the agreement Obama signed with the mullahs on nukes. I think that agreement is a travesty. It will clearly allow the Iranians ultimately to acquire nuclear weapons. It's going to give them $150 billion, which they'll get. That's been locked up through the sanctions. They'll continue to fund terrorism, the biggest state sponsor of terror in the world today, and Hamas and Hezbollah and other organizations that are supported by them will become even more active in the area. And the other thing that it'll do is it will encourage the proliferation of nuclear technology in that part of the world. Others, friends of ours, the Saudis, the Emirates, the Egyptians and so forth, who have not developed nuclear weapons, they've always relied upon the support of the United States, and nobody at that point except the Israelis had one in the region. But when the Iranians become armed with nuclear weapons, everybody else is going to try to find some way to acquire their own capability. They'll feel, based on recent events, that they can no longer count on the United States, and you will have a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, and that's Katie bar the door. That's a tremendous problem. We've already had proliferation in that part of the world in the past. Iraq, Saddam Hussein built a reactor at a Sirik outside Baghdad in '81. Israelis took it out. He rebuilt his program in '90. We took it out in Desert Storm in '91. When we took down Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi in Libya surrendered his nuclear program. He had centrifuges, he had uranium feedstock, he had a weapons design. He surrendered all of that to us because of what we'd done to Saddam, and he was afraid he was next. You know, there are numerous examples along the way where there have in fact been efforts in the Middle East to acquire nuclear capability. The Pakistanis have it. They had a guy who put their program together who sold that technology to the Iranians. The North Koreans built a reactor in Syria that the Israelis destroyed in '07. So the pattern's established. It's already happened many times in the past. The thing that stopped it previously is the use of force or the threat of military force. This time around, Obama didn't do that. He in fact bribed them to come back to the table, gave them everything they could conceivably ask for, and said that force wasn't an option. I think it's a terrible mistake, and it'll do enormous damage, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.